I found out the hard way that ranking talismans in the game might be a little difficult. All the +1s and +2s are gone, which has made the process a lot more streamlined than before. Percent values have changed around. Well, this sounds like a wonderful video to start writing. I'm sure nothing will make me change my mind about this easy video. Alright. That's fine. That's winnable. This is winnable. Yeah, all the armaments and pickups have passives built into their functionality now. And that wouldn't be such a huge problem if almost all these bonuses didn't also come from talisman effects, meaning the criteria for this video now comes with an extra couple layers of complexity. Not just thinking about whether or not the talisman benefits the character up front, but whether or not the effect is stackable with passives and relic effects, the viability of stacking the effect with itself versus using a weapon passive for the effect and just foregoing the talisman in hopes that you might pick up something better, and just a whole expansive array of different extenuating factors that go into making the right decision in 3 seconds or less, because it's night 2 and that storm damage is really fucking mean to poor oppressed revenants with low HP. Yeah, you should have picked up that talisman that gives you 15% more protection against hackers and dishonest ISPs, because guess what our video partner is today? Of all the world's villains, none are slimier than the modern opportunist. Those itching to sell your personal data, taking advantage of your vulnerability on public networks, restricting access to their products until you check a box basically signing your rights away. All of this makes a quality VPN an absolute necessity in today's environment. Nord is probably the easiest VPN to use. It's got a lot of handy one-click features that make it easier to navigate than other VPNs. They have a global network of servers too, which doesn't just mean more locations to link to, but the massive amount of server volume also means users get considerably faster speeds than other options that usually take a huge chunk out of your bandwidth. avtest.org actually verified this using speed tests with multiple VPNs. They even have a dark web monitor that scans deeper parts of the internet for your information, and its very own ad blocker that makes browsing YouTube just like it used to be. When you download it, it's literally as simple as just pressing connect. Every purchase of the 2-year plan comes with 4 extra months using the link nordvpn.com/rustyvpn in the description and pinned comment. And if there's ever any second thoughts, you've even got a 30-day money-back guarantee. Number 62, the Sacrificial Twig. It's all about the journey and not the destination. And boy, fuck mothering howdy, does this journey love wasting your time. This might be the rarest item of all time in both Nightreign and Elden Ring combined. Like, this bitch is like Blue Eyes Platinum Dragon Rare. And its actual uses are incredibly limited, since it not only expires after you use it once, but there aren't really that many instances where you're actually in danger of losing your runes permanently. Even if you have to leave them behind temporarily near a day 1 boss, you can always just return to the boss the next day with 5 more levels to shove up his ass. And at that point, you might not even need to pick up the runes. There have been so many runs where I left my runes in a spot I never visited afterwards and ended up just being level 15 anyways, so like, who even cares? Especially if I needed an item with a drop rate low enough to be considered a glitch to even access it. And especially when the merchants patrolling the castle area have a decent chance of selling the Twiggy Cracked tier for chump change, functionally invalidating this talisman into a paper bag and down the community garbage chute where it fucking belongs. Number 61, the Crucible Feather Talisman. Legends tell of a particular phylactery, an infamous trinket so vile, so disgusting, so undoubtedly beyond all question or dispute, astonishingly inept. I haven't picked it up once. You probably haven't picked it up once either, and I'm willing to guess 2 reasons why. The main reason being, you remember this talisman being listed on every possible source by every possible author as a complete waste of time and energy in the base game. And that reputation has grown into such an indignant tumor on the object that it has now carried over into an entirely different game. You don't even know for sure if it sucks or not, you just know you don't want it. The second reason, you could have sworn you just picked up a permanent buff at the end of the first day that improved dodging, and if you already have that buff on your character, I'm like 97% sure it can't be stacked. There aren't any values in the animation tables that I could find that suggest multiple or even a second improved dodge window. Here's the initial window, here's the single improved dodge window you get upon getting the effect. There's nothing after this, like, that's it. So unless there's someone out there knee-deep in the same information, I'm almost certain this effect cannot be extended or stacked with itself once you have it. So just hold out and go for the permanent buff that's offered to you by killing bosses instead of picking this up and dealing with a 10% penalty to the patience of your teammates. Number 60, the Mottled Necklace. 40 extra resistance to all status ailments across the board. It's an effect that loudly shouts its power to you with the excitement of an overzealous marketing team. But that excitement, unfortunately, ultimately culminates in a practicality that's effectively zero. There is one argument I've heard in favor of this talisman, and to be honest, it's not a very good one, at least I don't think it is, which has to do with madness builds fighting an enemy that deals another kind of status like poison or scarlet rot. I'm typing this very paragraph as the Everdark Sentient Pest just went live 3 days ago. I just quit a session where I rammed a madness build as Revenant through Fart-Ass's Cuphead villain-looking face, and I still disagree with you. A single charged Frenzy Burst builds up exactly 30 madness, and I'm probably too busy micromanaging who's downed on my team, getting my ult up, and seeing which minion I can summon to worry about me getting off one extra Frenzy Burst shot, because that's all this talisman is gonna give me. Actually, just thought of a second argument. If you have a madness build and you're fighting the Frostbite Dragon in the mountaintop, in which case I have a very simple solution for you. Stop fucking playing Mountaintop. Number 59, the Perfumer's Talisman. This was incredibly close to being placed in the video's roof gutter tier, but there's a single hyper-specific situation that involves me unloading a pair of spark aromatics into a bell-bearing fucker's face, and when that situation does come around, I would very much prefer having this talisman on me. Unfortunately, this talisman, much like its base game counterpart, has no effect on the duration or potency of buffs, so Blood Boil, Iron Jar, Uplifting, Acid Aromatics? Yeah, no, sorry. As soon as those two spark aromatics have been properly discharged, this talisman can go right along with them, and that mostly depends on whether or not the merchant is even selling them. Now, make no mistake, these spark aromatics are the perfect combination of easy to use, fast wind-up time, and stupid-ass damage. I don't think I've ever seen it do less than 600. It's fake firebending that ends up being better than actual firebending, but being able to only carry 2 per item slot pales in comparison to this next setback, which is you would be lucky to even find 2 in the same run. My advice for this one is to just hope you can rope in that companion jar talisman, because pots are fucking everywhere in this game and you'll have a much easier time making them work. Number 58, Prince of Death's Pustule. This might need more testing on my end, but I haven't the slightest clue what regularly drops in Deathblight encampments. And the few instances I've found the motivation to raid one, whatever I find is related to, well, helping me raid Deathblight encampments. Or just basic physical, non-elemental bullshit that I don't care about because I'm usually on Duchess. I am enthusiastically upfront with my disdain for Deathblight encampments. If I were to seriously cut loose and tell you everything that I find wrong about Deathblight encampments, or just Deathblight in general, it would need a 30-minute behind-the-scenes documentary funded by PBS. But in the interest of brevity, I think I'm just going to say that I never once found it useful to prioritize these encampments, and I never once held on to the talisman on the hunch that Wormface might be the day one boss, and actually have that hunch be correct. And even if I'm expected to keep this talisman on during that boss fight instead of something that'll just help the boss die quicker, then that just means we all get to gather around for a nice heated game of how many comments will it take to convince Rusty it's so hard to kill a fucking rat. Number 57 through 55, the 3 Horn Charms. 75 resistance to any ailment can be found on a weapon of blue rarity or better. So as to say, it's as abundant as sand on the fucking beach. And if you're being honest with yourself, you aren't really even gunning for any of those passives anyways. Like, oh, they're so good because they stack. You don't stack these. Shut up. I know how this shit works. All it takes is 1 improved sorceries or improved attack when two-handing, and that plus 75 resistance is a speck on your rear view. Hell, if I have blood or rod exaltation or any permanent buff related to it, I'd be going out of my way to proc that shit quicker, even if it's on myself. I'm only cutting the clarifying talisman a little bit of slack because it has somewhat of a place in madness builds, but don't you dare sit here and tell me you would rather have that over a warrior jar shard or a faithful canvas. And just in case anyone would like to use rotted woods as an argument, Luna, could you pull up the map? Okay, here are the 3 spots in which the Blessing of the Woods can appear. The trees where the blessing appears are very tall and windy and obvious, and there's this huge glow effect you can see them from. If you take the northeast hawk here over the woods and you know exactly what you're looking for, you can see it from a mile away. Okay, can I please say this is useless now? Number 54, Ritual Sword Talisman. I did happen to notice all of the +1 and +2 variants of every talisman were cut out, allowing for a more streamlined gameplay loop where the player can simply look at the icon and know exactly what they're getting. Most of the values on the talismans had to be changed because of this, but not the Ritual Sword Talisman. This one still sits at an unappealingly stinky 10%, and in a game where staying at full HP at any given time is really fucking hard, I just feel like that's not enough. The function itself is fine. I could even imagine a couple builds with it if I land on the right passive, passives, but Raider gives you an entire ability that literally encourages you to stand in front of shit and take damage, and the Guardian's Greatshield only has 100% negation in the physical department, meaning you're going to take some chip damage from dragons and sorcerers every so often. Even if I'm taking that out of the equation and giving this to someone that shouldn't be getting too much aggro like Recluse or Duchess, that means I would have to make space by sacrificing my Godfrey and Radagon Icons, Cerulean Medallion, Primal Blade, or either of the cast boosting talismans. And I could lay down an entire second paragraph of verbal smackdown on why that shit's never gonna happen. Number 53, the Ritual Shield Talisman. This talisman was lucky enough to breach the top 20 section in an incredibly outdated list video of mine that is almost definitely aged like a dehydrated grape. And most of my arguments there attempted to spotlight just how stackable this talisman buff was, using the Opaline Bubble Tier on a decent HP regen build as a tangible example. But in case I haven't made it clear enough, you can't just make a build in a Nightreign expedition. The build makes your ass, and you get to pick up the pieces and rearrange them in as creative a fashion as possible until something resembling a strategy magically appears. A lot of hypotheticals need to be answered for this one to work. Does your Recluse know when to use her ult? Can you capitalize on said ult? Do you have a good regen build? Or probably the most important question, do any of your current weapons have a passive that negate damage with successive attacks? Because if so, then congratulations! You get to invalidate this talisman's whole existence by just being proactive and playing the fucking game. Number 52, the Twinblade Talisman. It got boosted to 45% in the base game, and unless you had a weapon with a 3-hit R1 chain, even that felt underwhelming most of the time. But 15% is inexcusable. Just 15% on the final attack in a chain. Unless anyone is willing to bat for this talisman and why this is any better than the lineup of Scorpion talismans, then Ishizaki can catch 15% of my foot up his ass. I guess the Duchess can continue her attack chain in between dodges, but if you're bobbing and weaving through your opposition like a goddamn mosquito just to finish an R1 chain for 15% more damage, then it might be worth it to put down the ice and look for a strategy that's a bit less stressful for you. Number 51, the Blessed Dew Talisman. There's always trash to be taken out and cleaned up, and there's always housekeeping to be done. You can walk 10 steps in any direction and run into a random enemy, docile creature, organic life form, or a fucking berry plant. You're telling me you would rather have this talisman over Cameo, or even a weapon passive that restores like 20 HP per enemy downed or something? Or if someone on your team has a relic effect that heals their allies whenever they kill something. You only have 2 talisman slots, but you have up to 6 passives, and potential relic effects like your flask healing allies, items being conferred to allies, slowly restoring HP over time, and are you absolutely sure asking what this can stack with isn't a way to force pseudo viability because you want this talisman to be as good as it was in the base game? And it still wasn't even that good. Number 50, the Radagon Icon. I'm sorry, are we being serious? This barrel-chested, red-haired, designer store mannequin-looking fuck has the chutzpah to place itself among the ranks of Godfrey and Ancestral Horn, and it can barely shorten the casting time of basic spells by 10 frames. 16 was the highest improvement I ever noticed testing multiple spells, and it's arguably the same incantation that benefits the most from Radagon Icon in the base game, which is Placidus Axe's Ruin. Glintstone Arc, for example, is one of the most rudimentarily straightforward spells any caster build can get their hands on, and this talisman will never help out any more than 9 frames, not even a 1/6 of a second of improvement. I can at least see what they were trying to do here with this talisman, but again, I'm returning to the age-old argument of consistency and how important it is when the average run is this RNG dependent. It might be 9 frames on this spell, but 16 frames on this spell, or maybe 14 frames on this incantation. I'm not pulling out a fucking Excel sheet to keep track of all the different spells this talisman is good with when I could just grab a Graven School or a Godfrey Icon and know exactly what I'm getting every single time. Number 49, Arrow's Reach Talisman. A USDA certified gold standard projectile distance buff to the one character who can get away with engaging in a constantly fluctuating percentage of the game. There aren't too many weapon passive effects out there that benefit Iron Eye exclusively. The only one I can really think of is, well, damage fall off. Yeah, that's really about it. I can't really... Oh, and ranged attack power, you fucking dunce. Holy shit. Wow. I'm glad. Something that will only ever directly affect your character's performance if a bow and arrow are involved. Most weapon passives are these very general, wide-sweeping, all-encompassing buffs that seem more based around various playstyles than they do certain characters. But Iron Eye is lucky enough to get 2 whole weapon passives in the pool that no one else will ever use. Everyone else is just out here chasing bows and crossbows for their own passives attached to them, but no one is actively effectively using them as much as an Iron Eye. This redundancy, combined with a staggering sledgehammer nerf that cut this talisman's efficiency in half, gives us nothing more than a nice looking PNG with the marvelous ability to be forgotten before you've even stopped looking at it. Number 48, the Hammer Talisman. I don't remember having any strong positive or negative opinions on this talisman in the base game, but I don't need to remember to know that this one is unquestionably worse. Hammers are highly effective against shield-bearing foes, so much so that they are known as Night Killers. Night Killer. Okay, cool. All right, hold on. Let me put this Black & Decker up on my shelf containing my other Night Killers. I have a challenge for all of you. Name one enemy that consistently appears in Nightreign that actually uses a shield like a shield and isn't Lord Sworn Captain or Banished Knights because they die too quick. Oh, fuck. Grafted Scion. Okay, well, go kill Grafted Scion, I guess, and then ditch this plastic chew toy for something more valuable. Or just parry him. Number 47, Erdtree's Favor. I mean, if I see it, I'll pick it up. And if I'm playing Guardian, I might even keep it for a couple minutes. But if I stumble across a Curved Sword Talisman or a Viridian Medallion, this is the first thing I'm getting rid of. This is a placeholder talisman that you pick up on reflex. 1, because you don't have anything else to put there at the moment, so why the fuck not? And 2, because base Elden Ring has Pavloved you into thinking it'll win you the game no matter what. Erdtree's Favor in the base game also factored equip load into its metrics because equip load is something Nightreign recognizes as the nuclear shit pile that it is, leaving only 2 core stats for Erdtree's Favor to work with. But 7% in most cases is worse than the percentage values I see on basic bitch-ass blue rarity weaponry. And I'm only taking this with me because I haven't found exactly what I'm looking for yet, or I didn't have enough runes to buy the Dragon Crest Talisman from the Merchant Outpost. I actually don't remember which one costs more, but I know the Merchant Outpost sells them both. I'm not going to look it up because I think if Erdtree's Favor does end up being more expensive, it's just going to be funny. Number 46 through 43, the 4 Drake Talismans. Number 42, the Kendrick Lamar Talisman. All right, shittiest joke of 2025. Yeah, let's go, let's go. I've given up on searching for a Drake Talisman that actually coincides with the element of the Night Lord I queued up for. And what in the dick-riding Christ is a Spell Drake Talisman gonna give me against anything in the crater? The largest reactionary fanfare the Drake Talismans can ever possibly achieve is that player going, fuck. Well, it's something at least. In case it hasn't been clear already, a lot of talismans actually do stack with the basic weapon passives that you get from the weapons, and some of them make sense and are very easily stackable, like reducing spell FP cost, skill attack power, and item discovery. These particular buffs are also stackable, but with the added 1 in 5 chance that the damage I'm currently being slapped with coincides with the specific elemental negation this talisman is giving me. There is no way to convince someone on my team that this Halig Drake Talisman might be useful, because we chose the Pest raid, and that means Morgott has a good chance of invading us, so one of us should probably put this on. I can't Morse code the frequency of my pings to tell someone that information. Community intelligence just isn't quite there yet, and to be perfectly honest, I'd rather Morgott just die quicker anyways. Number 42, Assassin Cerulean Dagger. Okay, but why is it only 10? Why is it 10% and the Crimson Dagger gets a percent value of 18? I get keeping yourself healthy and not dying is sort of a vital component to helping the team, but like, are you telling me it's more important than the L2 button? Critical attacks can do one of 2 things. They can either hold a bigger boss in place while your 2 teammates exercise what I can only describe as quite a liberal amount of successive attacks to take advantage of a 5-second window of fuck around time, and they can effectively waste valuable seconds of a run because you accidentally backstabbed a piece of trash when you were just trying to revive the Iron Eye for the 5th time, but at least that blue bar is 10% fuller. I don't know where this discrepancy comes from, because a boss reward has a chance of giving you this same effect, and both the HP and FP bonuses are labeled as 10%. So what if it stacks with similar effects? I'm still going to continue on with my argument that it would just take one of the same effects to render this talisman useless, and I can use something else in its place, because buff management is the name of the game in this bitch. Number 41, the Primal Glintstone Blade. Harboring suspicion towards anything that reduces your HP or defense is a reflex that gets a lot harder to ignore when you have to deal with the implied pressure of 2 online strangers being objectively inconvenienced by your near death. Even if that is a basic function of the game, the attention you're forcibly ripping away from your team's otherwise flawless offensive strategy is something that starts to get into your head. Even if you were killed by absolute bullshit and both your teammates saw that bullshit, there's still that irksome, encroaching voice in your head that's like, ah, fuck. They totally think my 9-year-old brother is playing right now. And I can do without 15% more of that anxiety at any given time. My position on this talisman isn't too unlike the approach I take with max stamina versus stamina regen. Both are absolutely fine to have, but in practice, the latter just ends up pulling more weight. And I think the case is the same here as well. Relic effects give you access to FP restoration bonuses with certain weapons, successive attacks, successful guarding, critical hits, starting an expedition with starlight shards, starting an expedition with an assload of starlight shards. And the Recluse even has that shit built right into her core utility. And her ultimate, I guess. Yeah, for the whole team. Set your relics up right, and you can accommodate for your FP in ways that this talisman just can't. Number 40, the Companion Jar. As unfathomable in this earthly realm as this may sound, eons ago, predating the period of Jurassic Dominion, a video was uploaded by myself, and in that video, I voiced a particular disdain for consumables of the rotund variety. This only happened once, and it was vastly outweighed by the subsequent onslaught of content I've made since, peppering in little odes and salutes to everyone's favorite spectrum of spherical throwing objects. I was, as the kids say, corrected. But given how fast a basic fireball can grow in power from level 1 to 15, the amount of faith I have in such crude weaponry is not quite a vertical nosedive, but a gradually sloping trend into an unfortunate reality. Yes, I know this can stack with the relic effect that increases pot damage. It's still not good enough. Pots can only be held in pairs before gluttonizing another one of those valuable consumable slots you could have used for a stone sword key if you have the relic effect, or a starlight shard, which if you're a caster character, is effectively the same as about 7 to 8 fire pots that actually scale with your level. If there's a secret pot meta floating around out there, its only chance of being discovered lies in its ability to boost the status buildup of pots as well. And in Nightreign, that's absolutely what that shit does. Proccing status is noticeably easier with a Companion Jar Talisman, and this is most easily observed by testing the Swarm Pot since it's a gradual buildup, but that would require me to actually route in a bleed encampment on my way to properly genocide the shit out of whatever's patrolling the castle instead, and I'm just not gonna do that. Number 39, the Spear Talisman. Not a lot of uses with this one. I guess Guardian can make it work with his alternate halberd moveset, and anything involving arrows and bolts technically registers as a thrusting attack, so I guess you can zip through fuckers with Iron Eye's mark ability and then fire an arrow as something's trying to attack you, but it's only really worth it if you also have the Iron Eye specific relic that improves thrusting counterattacks after using your ult. If I'm playing Iron Eye, I'm keeping a lookout for some very particular passive effects and talismans, and the Spear Talisman is usually not one of them. It probably should be, but you know, if I'm being honest, I'm probably looking for something else. Number 38, the Red Feathered Branchsword. Using this talisman as a damage boost comes from the same pipeline of logic that tells you to cut the brakes on your Camry because you'd like to go faster. Not only is that very obviously not how cars work, but everyone in your subsequent warpath will incur damages that you will be responsible for. The only way to use this talisman correctly is that if your team has collectively clusterfucked a run so irreparably hard that a damage boost as comeuppance when you're about to die starts looking sexy. And this still doesn't take into account other teammates that might have heal effects on their abilities. What happens if your Guardian decides to ult and he has that relic effect on him that heals you when you're in the radius? Or actually, no, fuck that, better example. What happens if your Recluse uses her ult? Are you just not gonna hit the fucking boss? No. There's only one obviously fitting use for this talisman, and that's when you're the only one left alive, the boss is almost dead, and you're on the verge of booking a therapy appointment. Number 37, the Blue Feathered Branchsword. The threshold can only activate once your final HP is below 20%. And this is important because a hit that would normally take me from 50 to 10% HP will still take me from 50 to 10. This talisman doesn't start working like as soon as you dip below the 20% threshold. You have to first take the full damage of whatever hit you. And I don't know how familiar the average player base is with routinely fighting Everdark Sovereigns, but if your HP is that low, you're getting one-tapped. Some bitch is gonna sneeze on you and you're gonna die. Now, if you've got a couple of these stacked together in the form of weapon passives, then it might pull some decent weight, and it might even be worth it. But when I start thinking about everything I could have slotted in here instead of spending all my time preparing for the worst, all the worst ends up doing is breaking its foot off in my ass. Even if I'm barely getting touched by boss damage, those second chances aren't gonna last forever, and unless I've been hanging on to both Branchswords for the whole run, that's just not a war of attrition I'm interested in taking. Number 36, the Roar Medallion. I'm really trying to stick to an information-first initiative here, but the Roar Medallion ignites a great frustration from within me, and I think it's only right that I share it with all of you, because this could have been Nightrein's chance to apply some regularity to what is, in just about every other respect, a $40 hurricane of completely ungovernable properties. I want to grab this talisman by its shoulders and just shake it and ask it why it's so disinterested in the concept of just having fun and cutting loose. But it can't have fun. It doesn't know how. It could have boosted the Executor's Roar during his ult, or the Recluse's Magic Cocktail combination where she breathes a stream of fire. Maybe even the Raider ult if we're really trying to stretch the definition of what a roar entails. You think it does any of that shit? No, of course not. No, what sort of Monday morning waterlogged stick in the mud do you think we're working with here? You think it's interested in boosting any sort of innate ability your character has? Number 35, the Bull Goat's Talisman. Don't like being interrupted? This talisman helps bring out your antisocial side, because if you've got a statement to make, everyone else needs to read the room. Your room. And when you've got the Bull Goat Talisman, every room is your room. This actually found a very popular niche in Elden Ring that allowed lighter armors to reach over 51 poise and take a single basic hit without getting interrupted. This amounts to the approximate value of dick and balls when contextualized within Nightreign, because your choice in armor is only cosmetic and everyone flinches equally at the very start of an expedition, Raider and Guardian being the two exceptions. A group of middle school kids flicking hornets at you can just completely shit on your momentum if you let it happen. And after testing with multiple characters, a simple 25% boost seems to prevent being flinched by every other attack from basic weapons. These results continue to be the same even if receiving two separate 38% poise buffs as a boss reward. Raider and Guardian have 3 times the poise threshold of other characters, so stacking poise buffs on top of each other on these characters are gonna get you way more noticeable results. But you will never be able to play chicken with a charging magma worm no matter how high your poise is, because that is linked to your player character's toughness, which is much more difficult to enact control over. This is especially true against Night Lords, and it feels like poise buffs just don't do as much as I would want them to, because even if the occasional spear jab ricochets off of your massive barrel chest, most attacks are just gonna knock you over anyways. Number 34, the Gold Scarab. I always find this on my way to kill Magma Worm in the crater towards the end of Night 2, and usually when my team and I have already spanked Castle hard enough to be leaving the function with a full 15. I would love to actually find this at an appropriate time in the run where the rune boost would make progression easier, but it's not this universal stopgap that fast passes you to max level like people think it is. If you're familiar enough with the siege you've been dropped in, and you can pull together the team's collective 9 brain cells to lay down a route that doesn't blow ass, you can end every run you have at max level kind of easily. It's just a matter of knowing what to do with what you've been given. This is the second time I'm bringing up this argument, so I don't know, maybe ranking all the seeds might actually be a wonderful topic to make a video on in the future. But that whole recurring deja vu you get slapped with when you head into a run and it looks almost exactly but not quite like the run you literally just finished, yeah, that's not bugged or anything. The seeds are just that similar, and there aren't a lot of them. Number 33, the Old Lord's Talisman. This talisman does extend the duration of debuffs like Grail's Roar, Darkness, and the 2 full moon sorceries, if you land on them, but almost every successful run seems to leave me with a random assortment of Carian Flare, Ancient Death Spam, and motherfuckery of the purple variety. And I just don't think I've ever seen a Recluse or a Revenant cast any kind of defensive incantation on the team, because they usually have a relic setup that facilitates that kind of support far more consistently anyways. I don't go around throwing fortification spells up my team's ass like the Revenant, and I've played with lots of Revenants who also don't do that. I don't know, I mean, if I see it and I'm Revenant or something and I have a spot available, I'm scooping that shit up just because I can. Personal buffs like Frozen Armament and Dragon Bolt Blessing can be slapped on just about anything you want now, so it's not like it's better off left in the dirt or anything, but there are way too many comfort picks that a caster should be prioritizing, and it feels like 80% of the runs you'll find this in don't even give you the spells that actually benefit from it. Number 32 through 30, the Viridian, Cerulean, and Crimson and medallions. Whatever your favorite color is, it's 12% more of it. It's a modest boost to one of your core stats. We know exactly one thing about these talismans so far, and we've vaulted over about half the talisman lineup with breakneck enthusiasm. But the more boring the boost, the more flexible the boost. If I'm thinking ahead and I have, let's say, Dark Knight of the Wise for the maximum FP increase, that additional 12% boost is going to have that much more spunk behind it. If I have Knight of the Champion, then those stamina returns are going to be even fatter. You see, Nightreign is all about the little things adding up, such as stamina, or my frustration when I have someone leave for the third run in a row. And they're all executors for some reason. It's a generic stat boost that doesn't help out much alone, but it lends itself to stackability with relics, boss rewards that increase your stats, and other talismans. If you can't use it, just ping it for good measure and watch at least one of your teammates rushing to your location with the energy of a man with a flaming greatsword who really likes the color green. And then once he finds a warrior jar shard, he's throwing that bitch straight in the recycling bin. Number 29, the Curved Sword Talisman. Another entry in a bizarre family of talismans I've started referring to as the why the fuck is it called that group? Simple and honest on the surface, right? Need instructions on how to use it properly? Look no further than its very title. It's badass and informative all at once. Except it's neither of those things, and the fact that no one has highlighted this discrepancy for over 3 years is making me impatient. Of all the things I could list out that curved swords are not good at the very bottom of that list might be guard counters. I would sooner use the great shield I'm blocking attacks with to flapjack the shit out of the moron red main knight that thought he could hang, because that is something that I can do when I'm using this talisman with a great shield. In fact, I know the game wants you to do this because shields have been given their own unique critical animation, lending further weight to the idea that shields are perfectly capable as weapons all on their own, and it's still not even really that necessary. I mean, it makes a certain playstyle with shields a lot more tolerable, but if you aren't interested in that playstyle, or you're not playing a character with enough stamina to facilitate it, then it'll probably just be another talisman you see before sharing an awkward glance with your wilder, like, well, do you want it? Number 28, the Silver Scarab. An embarrassing amount of thought went into autistically repositioning this top portion of the list here, and I don't know how the hell the Silver Scarab landed this far up here, but I emphatically agree with myself. Item discovery is one of those esoteric stats with any iota of reliable research jammed deep in the unwashed armpits of Ishizaki's many contracted laborers locked in his basement. No one really knows how it works, we just know that it does. Trying to farm purples by killing bosses with high item discovery is kind of a waste of time, and it's not that the item discovery doesn't influence that kind of variable, it's just that you're going to be opening way more chests and looting way more bodies than you kill bosses, and that gives the item discovery bonus more chances to actually work in those instances. Everybody's sweet spot is a little different, but I think if you can manage to stack up around 100 item discovery and then start looting all the chests, I'd say you'd be finding at least one purple per encampment. And if you manage to set all this up near the beginning of a run, you'll be sprinting into Noclateo with a full 6 of golds and purples like you're properly attired for a Mardi Gras festival. Number 27, the Winged Sword Insignia. When life gives you lemons, make lemonade. Sour, expired, grossly unsugared lemonade that only makes you sad you didn't make it objectively better before drinking it. That's what it's like to land on the Winged Sword and not the Millicent's prosthesis. And your thirsty ass really loves lemonade too, so you're still picking this shit up if you see it. The attack power boost reaches a hard ceiling of 10, and since it revolves around successive attacks, it's best accompanied with relics and weapon passives that either stack or give you a bunch of extra shit for successively attacking. And by successively attacking, I mean not with a bow, because it doesn't work on bows. The talisman operates in 4 stages, but the buff amount on the 3rd stage is actually just repeated twice. Millicent's prosthesis does the same thing if you look in the params, and I have no idea why. Both stage 3 and 4 of the boost here is marked at 10%. The upside is that it's pretty easy to reach the 10% attack boost, but no matter how quickly you can cram power stance dagger L1s into a falling star's ass, 10% is all you're ever gonna get. Who even decided on the number 11 for the prosthesis buff anyway? That plus 5 dex feels like such an arbitrary decision, like you added 5 dex and thought, no, this buff needs exactly 1% more help for this to be balanced. And as is the case with everything about a game constantly forcing you into an undignified submission to a digital lottery, if I don't get them both in the same run, I'm probably not gonna give a fuck if they stack with each other. Number 26 and 25, the Axe and Claw Talismans. Of the legendary weapons found in the game, a plethoric amount of them have passives innately tied to certain attack inputs, and with the right talisman equipped, the total AR of these attacks get throttled so high into the clouds that at least 2 commercial airliners are in danger of a direct collision. Marika's Hammer, Dragon King Cragblade, Sacred Relic Sword, Golden Order, Ruin's Greatsword, Axe of Godric, Almost half the legendary lineup of armaments features some sort of alternative attack. And I might be going against a certain line of logic by preferring the claw over the axe nonetheless, but that's only because you jump a fucking hell of a lot of times in this game, and if you're playing Raider or Wilder, it's a playstyle that's kinda preferred over most others, to such an extent that spitting down the throats of whatever's patrolling the castle should be a paid occupation for you. 12% might not sound like much, but boosting an action in the game that is power stance friendly, has both forward and vertical momentum that allow you to both close in and dodge a lot of the game's ground crawling attacks at the same time, and inflicts massive poise damage in a game where getting a critical on a bigger boss is almost completely synonymous with that boss's hilariously sudden death. And if it weren't for the convenience of listing both of these talismans together so I can save myself a paragraph, Claw would have been given its own section just so I could properly explain just how leagues above everything else in its family it actually was. Number 24, the Greatshield Talisman. If I'm Guardian, I've probably given up on something in my life, and I'm just looking to satiate my main character syndrome by pretending to run a babysitting service for 45 minutes. And that's exactly what the Greatshield Talisman here is gonna help me do. You know why? Because shields can slap some motherfucking ass in this game. If you're lusting after a playstyle that requires enough stamina to both take and inflict massive damage, 20% more guarding ability is a pillar of divinity sent from on high, feeding directly into a build that will make shrugging off point-blank hits from gargoyles and falling star beasts feel effortless. Guarding ability is also a type of weapon passive you can find, and although the same hefty 20% bonus can only be offered on purples, its ability to stack with itself is the exact fragrance of seduction that eventually pulls in every Guardian main into this playstyle like a tear in space-time. Fuck halberds. Great shields get better strength scaling anyways, and when you discover the ability to stand in front of gods and dare them to knock you over, the gallons of saliva induced as you melt into yourself is gonna need its own irrigation system just to get it all out of your room. Number 23, the Pearldrake Talisman. Nightreign Shifting Earth comprises 4 different subregions with 4 very distinct climates, being volcanic, frigid, deciduous, and the UK. The crater has you fighting a bunch of fire prelates and flame chariots, finishing off with a decisive battle against one of the game's strongest arguments in favor of the importance of leg day. But not all environments are as dead-brained and straightforward as the crater, and all the linear A to B components found in Nightreign's parent IP have been thoroughly removed. There is no, oh, I'll just equip this talisman for this problem and then take it off once I'm in the clear. Sometimes you're just gonna get assaulted by a black knife on your way to deal with a natural-born Estelle, and have just enough time after the tussle to go magmatically mental on some dragonkin ass outside the courtyard. Sometimes a gargoyle moves in next door to a giant chicken dumpling, and they've decided you're gonna host the weekend barbecue. These all too common situations are made slightly less strenuous with a Pearldrake Talisman, and I pray to whatever god out there is idiotic enough to enact mercy on us humans in 2025 that I run into this talisman every single run I can. Number 22, the Arrow Sting Talisman. Ranged weapons encompass more than just standard bows, but also crossbows, which offer higher than average damage in exchange for no scaling. The weapon passives come in at 7, 10, and 14%, and can very obviously be stacked with itself as hilariously as possible. Great bows don't really have the damage fall-off problem, and tend to do serviceable damage already, making great bows some of the best candidates, and because great bows scale mostly with strength, this talisman's utility wouldn't even be that lost if given to a Wilder or a Raider. That won't change how furious people might be at you if they see a Raider in the team's backline taking the Nightlord battle as his opportunity to tighten up that open stance, but it all comes down to what's taking up the other spaces in your inventory. If Iron Eye has the Arrow Sting Talisman on his person, great bow damage between him and someone like the Raider becomes pretty much negligible, and your Iron Eye is way more likely to have weapon passives and relic effects that improve bow attack power and drop-off reduction. Like, I get great bows scale with strength, but it's also a BC split between that and Dex, so like it's not that big of a deal. But if Wilder wants to make himself scarce in the backline and use Augur as a pincushion with Lion Greatbow, then I probably won't ask if he has the talismans to facilitate it. I'll just be glad he knows how bows work. Number 21 and 20, Taker's Cameo and Godskin Swaddling Cloth. The Swaddling Cloth borrows its ideas from the Winged Sword and Prosthesis, but instead aims for a more supportive role. There is a permanent buff floating around out there involving the restoration of HP with successive attacks, but it's only 3% and you won't be getting much help from weapon passives either, since the only passive you can roll that actually restores HP with attacks only works if you have the weapon in your hand. You don't have to be attacking shooting with the weapon, but it does have to be visibly on your person for it to trigger. Oh, and that weapon effect heals a flat amount of HP instead of a percentage, so unless you're on a squishier character, you're probably not going to want that. This emphasizes the uniqueness of the Swaddling cloth buff, but compromising its exploitability via buff stacking. This compromise does not exist for the Taker's Cameo effect. HP restoration when defeating enemies is a persistent weapon passive, which means the weapon doesn't have to be actively held for the effect to work. This facilitates a comedically strong groundwork for builds that let you heal an entire flask worth of HP from a land octopus, making last-minute exploration in between nights 2 and 3 insanely comfortable. But since upgrading via killing trash around camps and such has a very hard ceiling, I think I would rather just have something that gives me a little extra sustain during more important fights. Number 19, the Assassin's Crimson Dagger. Critical attacks establish the foundation of some of the game's strongest and funnest playstyles like parrying, guard countering, and backstabbing, all of which are incredibly risky strategies that are usually precursored by at least a couple dumb mistakes and mistimings that cost you some of your precious life force. 18% on this one, and it stacks with the other boss buffs that restore HP with critical hits. Don't know where the 8% gap in efficiency came from, since both the boss buff variants give you 10% of each stat, but to anyone using relic effects involving critical hits, building around a talisman like this feels as simple as putting the square object into the square hole. If you see a weapon passive with critical attacks or a relic that gives you stamina regen after a critical, that's just more unleaded fuel for the 7-mile spanking machine you'll be running through anyone with weak knees. Number 18, Millicent's Prosthesis. On top of being a direct and mathematically provable upgrade to the winged sword, Millicent's Prosthesis manages a fully unique, nothing but net swish from half-court buff effect just by taking 2 smaller buffs and forcing them into coexistence. Looking at the hierarchy of compatibility with each character, Duchess and Executor are probably the first 2 in line to receive the maximum throttle from this, but Wilder can still proc the effect with just 2 power-stanced Greatsword L1s, and honestly, even if you're Iron Eye, you should still probably find a way to use this. Like, it's not that it doesn't work with Iron Eye, it just doesn't work on bows specifically. Here's the optimal Iron Eye setup. Dex weapon in your main hand, bow in your left hand. You've got light and heavy attacks, easy access to the skill of your main weapon with L2, and you can still use the bow's primary fire with L1. Now every possible tool on your person is a single button away. Number 17 and 16, the Graven School and Faithful's Canvas Talismans. The rudiments of casting and knowing what's worth it when picking through a weekend yard sale of staves and seals have almost completely changed from its parent game. The rules are nowhere near the same, and you'll catch yourself hunting for spells you wouldn't even be caught dead with in base Elden Ring. Single shot and multi-shot spells feel much more balanced than they did before, and in fact, some single shots like Loretta's Great Bow and Gravity Well seem to be a league or 2 above the rest in power. I've been in games with recluse mains who will carry entire expeditions just by perching themselves on a high ledge and spamming lightning spear at field bosses doing 800 damage per shot. I've used the only 2 brain cells left in my corporeal form to fire out a cone of oracle bubbles and just watched a Night Lord walk into that shit and take yellow damage. I've lobbed a cannon of Hema into the second night boss and watched in astonishment as the stance break sound effect played over top of itself 3 times and my headphones vibrated my whole upper body. You give me any more than 11% of that, my ass is gonna end up in the hospital. Number 15, the Dragon Crest Shield Talisman. Physical damage negation is the only type of defense that doesn't come with its own weapon passive, but rather in the form of a permanent buff after defeating a boss. And that scarcity is precisely what makes this talisman effect so coveted. Physical damage is, without any semblance of competition, your main opposition in just about every encounter imaginable. Remember, it takes knowledge to cast a spell, and it takes conviction to summon a fireball. But everyone knows how to punch someone in the fucking face. Merchant outposts always sell this talisman alongside Erdtree's Favor and the Ritual Sword, meaning this talisman is not only coveted for its function, but is also one of the only talismans in the game that can be found with a reasonable degree of regularity. And in a game where powerful boss rewards can just disappear from within the tangible boundaries of the universe, I guess, consistency is fucking king. Number 14, the Green Turtle Talisman. Rivers have dried up, mountains have eroded into dust and rubble, and entire religions have been founded and dissolved into eternal obfuscation. At the end of space and time itself, a single sentiment reverberates through the cosmos, and that sentiment is my thick, vapid ass chanting what's been the channel mantra since Elden Ring became a fucking video game. Stamina regen is better than maximum stamina. Nope, no, fuck you, yes it is. Aggression, evasion, defension, whatever. No matter the job, the Green Turtle Talisman is still just the sauce it was years ago, which sounds positively asinine to say about a talisman with an effect this barely noticeable, but every time you've needed one extra roll or just one more attack at the end of a chain to bury a fool at the exact right time before his attack connects, you always seem to get one. The Green Turtle saving my ass in situations where I've completely forgot I even had it on, just stokes the flames further for the subjective but very agreeable notion that stamina management is for pussies. I feel like stamina is really only something you pay attention to and consider buffing when it's a resource you don't have in a critical moment. And the Green Turtle Talisman, and like one other stamina regen effect placed on your character, is your own personal license to just spend the run giving a shit about something else. Number 13, 12, and 11, and 10, the Scorpion Talismans. Nightreign's lineup of Scorpion Talismans comes with the unfortunate reputation of their Elden Ring predecessors, often prompting immediate and unanimous dismissal every time one shows up. But Nightreign is an entirely different game with entirely different rules. The Scorpion charms now sit quietly on the golden pedestal of Titanhood, discreetly gathering the same screen time as some of the game's most powerful talisman effects. The positive returns here, seen by caster builds and characters, are pretty much immediately obvious, but as Nightreign was vigorously ejected from the womb of its parent IP into the front of Steam's most played, one of the more unfortunate genetic traits it inherited was damage splits on main hand armaments. You'd think this is something they would make a bit more streamlined as well, considering their approach to weapon scaling. If I go into my equipment and see the magic icon next to my Wing of Estelle without any means of properly viewing the damage split, magic being its only damage type is going to be a really comfortable assumption to make. The Golden Order Greatsword and Cypherpada, for instance, would benefit way more from a sacred Scorpion Talisman than on something like the Blade of Calling. And the only reason I'm comfortable with saying none of that shit even matters is because a 15% spike in such a broad scope of weapons and tools is both irresponsibly strong, and it's one of the only buffs in the game that actually exceed its matching passives found on weapons, which can only reach up to 12%. Oh, and just like a quick little aside here, if you're playing Duchess, the Magic Scorpion charm might be your single most important talisman. There are only 10 sorceries out of the 65 in the game that deal a subtype of damage that isn't magic. 2 of them deal both physical and magic damage, 2 more of them are specifically used for status application and deal no damage, and 1 other has a special effect tied to its damage that works similarly to an HP sap. Your highest scaling is with intelligence, and since staff scaling has been made more streamlined to fit with the pace of the game, magic damage sort of becomes a specialty of hers. So if you have a Duchess and you find a Magic Scorpion charm, then you better fucking you give her that shit. Please? Please, like, I'm begging you. Number 9, the Crimson Seed Talisman. The Crimson Seed, I think, has the highest floor and the lowest ceiling of any passive bonus in the game. Flask Restoration, or at least HP Flask Restoration, is tied to an unchanging percentage of 60, and this can be enhanced through passive bonuses given by clearing encampment bosses, Everjail bosses, and generally just anything considered a boss encounter. No matter what your HP is, no matter what buffs or talismans or passives you have on supporting your max HP, 60% of it will always be healed by using a Crimson Flask. Science, unfortunately, doesn't have any fitting terminology synonymous for Apex tier ass slappage, but Flask Restoration is absolutely that kind of bonus. However, this creates a very low ceiling where you don't really need more than 2 of the same bonus type to reach its maximum possible benefit. A 20% increase in Flask efficiency brings you to a 72% restoration in total, since it's taking the 60% you're healing and improving that amount by 20%. So if you were to have 50% Flask restoration in total, this would mean 1 flask restores 90% of your max HP. And if I have achieved this amount of efficiency in a run, picking up a Crimson Seed Talisman on top of that is only going to give me diminishing returns. Still one of the best talismans in the game, but it absolutely has a ceiling. Number 8, the Carian Filigreed Crest. You know how fucking decked weapon skills are in this game? In case anyone here isn't in the know, casters and brawlers in Nightreign are more separated than they've ever been. And I think that's a good thing because it's that much easier to make split-second decisions. Stabs scale with intelligence, seals scale with faith. Now shut the hell up. And this works just as well for the brawlers because weapon skills are inherently tied to the scaling of the weapon itself. Blade of Death no longer scales off of faith, that shit is a dex exclusive. Nebula from Wing of Estelle, same thing. Goldbreaker on Marika's Hammer, give that shit to your raider, forget it existed. You see how sleek and contoured this system is now? Well, I'm a big fan, and so are a lot of wilders and executors because that means they're grabbing shit they never even looked at in the base game. The executor does more damage with the skill on the Glintstone Criz than the fucking Duchess, and it's even better for supportive weapon skills because those are usually the ones with higher FP costs. Golden Vow needs 40 FP to even cast, which is a fat fucking laugh because Rallying Standard needs 30. Number 7, the Ancestral Spirit Horn. FP Restoration isn't the most difficult buff to stack with. You've got relic effects that give you FP Restoration on successive attacks with certain weapons, killing enemies, critical hits, everything except going AFK and fixing yourself a fucking pizza. And since DLC items are in the pipeline somewhere, even that's going to be patched in soon too. But this is one of those passive bonuses where it already pulls enough weight by itself, but stacking it on top of other effects just changes the entire FP economy of the run. You will never need another Starlight Shard, and your teammates will actually think you're a lobotomite for not picking them up. Casters, jump L1ers, bow spammers, and pretty much every other type that exists will always garner some amount of benefit from passive effects that trigger when killing enemies, because it's extremely easy to do so. Trash exists everywhere. Crabs, wolves, putrid corpses, nobles, even night boss events give you this appetizer of slop for you to kill before the actual boss appears. And if you're in that rough of a spot, just take one of those hammers collecting dust in your pocket and start giving everyone lethal concussions. Some would bring up the point that this talisman is worthless during Night Lord battles, which it is, but it offers such a comfortable amount of FP sustain in every other situation that I just don't think it matters. Number 6, the Warrior Jar Shard. This one's in the same position as the Filigreed Crest. Depending on how a unique skill would sometimes scale with Intelligence, Faith, or Arcane, boosting skill attack power wasn't always the most straightforward task, and occasionally it would even convince you the skill was just bad when actually you just leveled the wrong stat. That's not really a problem here. Armaments that aren't catalysts are pretty much always going to scale with either strength or dex, making the application of weapon skills extremely easy to get the hang of. Skill attack power is also a weapon passive, but it only tops out at 11% on purple and gold weapons, while this talisman juices them all up by the same healthy 15% it always has. And in a lot of cases, weapon skills are what define the weapon. There's no finesse or confetti with this one. Give this to your Wilder and enjoy the free carry. Number 5, the Godfrey Icon. Godfrey here needs no introduction, but since I can't think of much to say on this one, I'm gonna give him one anyway. It's one of the best talismans you can pick up, and it's a masterclass in comedy that none of the 8 pivotal characters in the game even know who the guy is outside of a single portrait somewhere in the round table. Like, that painting probably collects more dust than a Dyson. It stacks with weapon passives that increase skill attack power and charge sorceries and incantations, and I've noticed that as long as you aren't immediately being pressured by anything, getting off a charged spell during a boss is actually much more consistent, just because you're part of a team of 3 and the aggro is so divided. So you're probably going to take advantage of this a lot more than you think. I think I would have more confidence in myself to skydive through a basketball hoop like Spyro the Dragon than to fully charge Loretta's Great Bow and actually hit something with it in base Elden Ring, but in Nightreign, it's honestly never been easier. There's no finesse or confetti with this one. Give this to your Recluse and enjoy the free carry. Number 4 and number 3, the Kindred and Blood Exaltation Talismans. All arcane builds should have these talismans. All players who are queued with someone with an arcane build should have these talismans. If you're not an arcane build but you just suck at fighting sentient pest or sanguine nobles, you should still have these talismans. If any single teammate of yours is currently using a katana or a claw weapon, you should have these talismans. If you and your buddies are out on a night at the town looking to give your consort's chamber a thorough drenching, these talismans will be your ID for entry. Having on the Kindred Talisman at any point in the Rotted Woods is just a free layer of muscle. The Blood Exaltation Talisman stacks with the Mogwin passive and the Recluse's relic effect that triggers blood loss during her ult. Not only are they easily stackable, they're activated based on vicinity, so a random fire monk can stub his toe on the edge of a smithing table, and if you're close enough to it, the game just gets 20% easier for 20 seconds. I still think the Blood Exaltation Talisman is more useful because this is a game where shit just really needs to die quickly for you to keep momentum up, and the Blood Exaltation Talisman I think is just better at helping you do that. But realistically, if I see either of these popping out of a Scarab at any point, I'm just gonna shut my mouth and take my free sigils. Number 2, the Symbol of Avarice. Alright, everyone sit the fuck down. Welcome to my master's thesis on why the Symbol of Avarice is a slam dunk bitch slap of a sleeper hit, your past, present, and future, judge, jury, executioner, and everything in between. Rune acquisition buffs are probably the game's single most straightforward way to expedite your team's progress. Naruto sprinting up the power ladder as fast as possible. Have some good routing knowledge and just remember to actually use the golden foulfoots and you'll probably get to the top around the middle of day 2 and you can just take all that shit off. But what if you don't want to do that? Are you looking to interrogate that raider on your team who suddenly stopped leveling at 10 for some reason, but he's got Avarice on and shows zero interest in sticking with your duo queue? I can tell you why he's doing it. When Libra appears as a scale-bearing merchant that just sells you shit, it's just 3 random choices from anything in his selection. But if you land on a Libra raid event that gives you Demon's Plating after clearing the curse, that drive-thru's got the same dollar menu going up on that bitch every single day, and on that menu is the symbol of Avarice. A rune acquisition relic and a symbol of Avarice working together means not only are you likely to reach level 15 very easily, but you'll do it with a generational wealth of runes gloriously exiting your ass cheeks on the way to the boss door. And pairing that with the Demon's Plating buff you get when cleansing Libra's curse allows you to take some of the game's most ridiculously clip-worthy damage and just drive that semi right through the boss door and into an Everdark's dumb shitty life. This is the kind of build for players who make cinematic montages of themselves with 2 million runes and a realistically countable number of brain cells. It is the Moray sword of talismans. 60 item discovery is also like a pretty massive amount of item discovery, which most prominently increases the drop rate of blues and purples found in chests and lootable locations. I already covered how item discovery works in the Libra video, but you're best off just popping a Silverfoot on top of this, which that's going to get you to 90, and just opening as many chests as you possibly can for this to like really start pulling weight. Either you find the purple you've been looking for the whole run, or you find another purple your teammate can use. And the only thing better than wrecking the Night Lord's entire life with 3 hits is doing it with a weapon that looks cool. Or doing it with a weapon that's irredeemably shit and carrying the run anyways because you have Demon's Plating. The only thing really preventing me from giving this one the trophy is that the talisman by itself, it isn't really too impressive. Only the fact that it's a guaranteed choice during a Libra raid. And I can't be dishonest with myself and say Demon's Plating isn't responsible for pulling 90% of that cart. Number 1, the Dagger Talisman. 24% additional damage for every critical hit is a 5-star military grade grand slam of a no-brainer. Of all the relic effects and boosts in the game that are available, critical hits seem to get this absurd wealth of flexible benefits that it can just choose from. More runes, more HP and FP, stamina recovery, ultimate charge, just fucking turning invisible like Violet from The Incredibles and shit, legendary weapons you can find that have enormously helpful effects tied to their critical attacks, and just about every dagger in the game has some sort of enhanced critical modifier that isn't immediately obvious. The Duchess's starting dagger gets 130! There's just no ceiling with this one. Critical attacks have so much they're able to stack with, on top of being so easy to perform sometimes that you can trip and fall into a critical animation by complete accident. Set yourself up for a good crit build and you can fold the entire castle like a $5 lawn chair. Crucible Knights only need to be parried once. Banished Knights take half the day just to turn their shiny metal asses around. Trolls avoid leg-focused workout regiments like Black Kitchen Mold. 5 of the 7 castle basement bosses are also vulnerable to parries. The other 2 have knee cartilage made of candle wax, so it doesn't even fucking matter. And of the 12 available shield ashes you can pick up, 6 of them are a type of parry. Parry doesn't even need to be on a shield. It can be on fucking anything it wants. I found it on a Qatar one time. Dark Knight of the Baron just gives you a 38% critical damage boost before you've even tied your fucking shoes and left the round table. I don't know how else to say it. If you see this talisman, pick it up and hide it like you're smuggling Schedule 1 drugs into New Mexico. Critical attack builds are like ordering Nightreign's Deluxe Edition and then receiving a second Wilder helmet due to a mail processing order. This talisman could pick up your kids from soccer practice and make it back home just in time to fuck your wife.